You're listening to Switched On Australia, the podcast that tracks the opportunities and challenges of electrifying everything, everywhere. Switched On is brought to you by the publishers of Renew Economy, Australia's best informed, most read website focusing on the green energy transition, and is supported by Boundless Earth. Boundless Earth uses philanthropy, investment and direct advocacy to help Australia become a global force in a decarbonised world. Hello and welcome to Switched On Australia. I'm Anne Delaney. Thanks for joining me. 10 regional towns in Victoria have been told their gas network will be shut down next year because the company supplying the gas says it's become too expensive. Around 1,145 customers in Marong, Heathcote, Swan Hill, Maldon, Robinvale, Kerrang, Nathalia, Terang, Lakes Entrance and Orbost will be impacted. These are all communities that sit outside Victoria's main gas pipeline and currently rely on compressed gas that gets trucked in. The gas company, Solstice Energy, has told affected customers they'll help fund and coordinate a switch to LPG. Or if people want to go all electric, they'll assist with some of those costs. But even though Solstice won't commercially benefit from people choosing LPG, the way things are tracking, a lot more households will end up on LPG rather than making the move to efficient electric appliances. Environment Victoria has been working directly with affected households. What they're hearing is a lot of anger, confusion and uncertainty about how to manage this energy transition that's suddenly been thrust upon them. And this gas shutdown in Victoria is in stark contrast to what happened in Esperance in Western Australia when that community was transitioned off gas. There, every customer was individually consulted, households were offered funding for new appliances and advice along with induction cooking demonstrations, and the WA government injected around $10 million to support a smooth, fair and genuinely empowered transition. Lucas Healey is the Senior Climate and Energy Advisor at Environment Victoria. Lucas Healey, thanks so much for joining the Switched On podcast today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You've been talking to people on the ground in some of the towns where Solstice is phasing out this compressed gas network. What are they saying about the phase out so far? I suppose it's just over a year to go before they pull the plug.
Yeah, and for some of them, they don't actually know when it's going to start. So in reality, a town might only get maybe 6 months to know that they're up next and to figure that out. We've been asking people directly and also talking with some of the other groups that are working with these communities. And I think there's a lot of anger because these gas networks were only built very recently. They're only just over a decade old. And for some people, they're living in a new housing development that's they might be living in a house that's only a couple of years old, and they've been connected to this gas. They've paid for all these new gas appliances, and they really have had no idea that this was on the cards or this was coming. So there's, I think, shock and anger and a sense of unfairness for those people, having to kind of think about something that they really didn't have to think about. For some people, they purchased a house fairly recently, and when you get the documents, when you're doing your due diligence to buy a new house that says it's connected to the gas network, it didn't tell them that it's one of these little kind of isolated gas networks, not the mains that most people think about. So it's, I think, a bit of shock and anger, and it's really exposed the information vacuum that's already existed.
It's hard to believe that the company, if not the government, didn't know that this was on the cards, or can we take it at face value that the business imperative just doesn't stack up anymore for Solstice Energy?
I think it's interesting to think about this in the context of how this came to be in the first place. So these networks were built as part of a program that was called Energy for the Regions, and that was an initiative of the previous Baillieu-Napthine government in Victoria, where parts of regional Victoria were promised connection to the gas network, and it would be expanded to them, and it would give them, and this is what they were being told at the time, much cheaper energy, that there was plentiful gas. And these are all things that at the time a government would have known weren't actually true, because it was also around that time when the exports of LNG from Queensland, which is what's caused the skyrocketing gas prices in the East Coast, when that was kind of all signed off and very much in train. So at the time, the government was trying to deliver this project, and they were having a lot of trouble delivering it because the gas networks were not giving them acceptable tenders. So it was actually never commercially viable to begin with, but it was popular, and it was touted as this great thing for regional towns. And then it was rolled out. The gas was it was always quite expensive, and then it just got more and more expensive over time, to the point where it was cheaper for a lot of people to be connected to have LPG bottles delivered to your home or business instead of being connected to this. But because of the old rules that we had in Victoria, where if you built a new house, it had to be connected to gas if it was there and stuff like that.
Right.
So where there's new housing development, they've kind of not been given a choice, and they've been opted into these very expensive gas networks. You know, they're getting project-built homes where you don't really have a lot of choice in how it's built and how it's serviced and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And the subscription rates for these new gas networks were never very high. So it kind of started off not commercially viable, and it just got worse from there. And so I think it was really just a white elephant from the start.
So it was never commercially viable from the start, and as you say, it seems to have got commercially worse in terms of returns for the company. Who's now shouldering the burden of the phase out? Because I understand, well, certainly the press release that Solstice put out said that they'd work closely with customers for a smooth change. But in reality, who is shouldering the burden now?
It's being shared around, I think, and a lot of it's being borne by the affected customers themselves. There have been quite a few community groups that have stepped in to help people deal with it and talk to people about electrification and the benefits and how to go about it and that sort of thing. And so Electrify, Lot and Mallee, Goulburn Valley Community Energy and the Gippsland Climate Change Network have all stepped in, and these are all volunteer groups that are helping with that. The SEC have been holding information sessions and helping people.
The State Electricity Commission.
Yes, sorry, the State Electricity Commission in Victoria. But a lot's been sort of borne by the customers themselves. Solstice will be very hands-on and help out if you're being connected to LPG. But if you want to go electric, which is where you'll switch over to the much, much lower bills, especially for heating your home, they're giving you some subsidies, but they're kind of saying you're on your own, you've got to organise your own trades and that sort of thing. So the level of engagement's very different compared to whether you're switching to LPG, which is going to cost people a lot of money, or if you're going for the sort of cheaper over the medium and long-term electric option.
So Solstice has a commercial imperative to be putting people on the LPG. Do they have any interest at all in actually getting people onto electric alternatives?
Well, I think if they're switched on to LPG, Solstice is really out of the picture. They don't have any further benefit from that. I think they're basically retreated from Victoria. It really comes down to the contract they've negotiated with the government, and it seems that the government's been able to get some subsidies out of Solstice, which is helpful. But it looks like Solstice are quite keen to just sort of get out of town and not have to worry about this anymore.
Victoria has a gas substitution roadmap. You know, this is a path to get the state off gas, which is obviously enviable. But does what Solstice is actually doing really intersect with that substitution, that gas substitution roadmap? Is this what a gas exit actually is going to look like in practice?
The gas substitution roadmap has done some really important things that will protect people in the future, and didn't come quick enough to be able to help these customers. And the major one there is the change in the planning rules, which means that if you're building a new house, that you don't connect it to gas anymore. And what that is that's really, really important consumer protection, because people aren't going to get stuck with these stranded assets, these gas appliances, as well as the really high bills that you get from heating your home in Victorian climate with expensive gas. As far as in future, these are kind of fairly specific types of networks because they're these small localized networks. They're not subject to the same rules and the level of regulation, if you like, that apply to most of the gas networks. So the Solstice Energy case provides kind of an early indication of what a pretty unplanned gas retreat looks like, and it's not a very good outcome for the people. What we do know is that prior to this Solstice program, there have been fairly recent, like in the last 20 years, extensions to the mains gas networks. And when you extend a gas network into an existing area, it's really dependent on who wants to connect to that, who sees a reason to change what they're doing and connect into that gas network. And so they're not as well subscribed as areas that had gas and then it was sort of a new greenfield development from there, a new housing estate or something like that. And so these areas, which reach into different parts of kind of regional and the city fringes of Melbourne, they are parts of the gas network that are not very well subscribed. And so it means they're not very economic. And when we think about the future of the gas network, we really need to start thinking about, for those people who are more vulnerable to gas network retreat in some form, how do we help them prepare? How do we make them aware that this could happen in the next, 5, 10, 15 years, and that they really need to start thinking, okay, next time I'm having to buy a new heater for my house, maybe I'll choose something different, and that'll save me a big headache in the long term.
I mean, clearly this could have been done better. Do you think that what is happening there in regional Victoria could have been a positive example of how we retreat from gas? It could have been a model for what else could be done in Victoria?
I think it still can be a model, and I would like to see some kind of greater engagement there. If you kind of compare what's happening with these 10 towns affected by the Solstice shutdown with Esperance in Western Australia, reading the reports about Esperance, I think they kind of started off quite similarly, where everyone got told the gas is being shut off.
Yes.
And it took them a little while before they realised, we need to actually do some proper engagement, and we need to pay a bit more of this as well. In Victoria, it's a bit different in the sense that we already have a bunch of incentives and discounts that are available through Victorian energy upgrades and schemes like that. And they also have accreditation of installers. And so there's good oversight. You can find someone that can do the job, and there's a regulator to kind of oversee that and make sure it's done properly.
But is that enough?
It's a good question. And the other thing, I guess, is nowhere in Victoria is as remote as Esperance. Esperance is a very remote place. So it should be able to be done a lot cheaper in Victoria. And depending on really primarily the type of heating system that people want in their house, it can be done a lot cheaper. But there's, I think, the gaps that are there. One of the main ones is the SEC, they have a digital home planner that provides advice. And that's really good for most types of electrification because most people are kind of doing it bit by bit. Unless you're doing a major reno, you're kind of going, I need to replace the hot water system, so I'll do this now. And maybe I'm planning to zhuzh up the kitchen, and so I'm going to change the cooktop and that kind of thing. But with these towns, people are going, okay, you've got 6 months.
Yes.
And that's a pretty... that's pretty quick, and that's, there's a lot to get your head around in that. And so I think that gap in sort of having something packaged that can help people out. And I think the other major gap is access to some low-cost finance as well, because what we're aware of is that quite a lot of the affected people are already in mortgage stress, and to have to deal with this, and also you really want to deal with it before winter hits, because if you're running gas ducted heating off a LPG gas bottle, you have to buy a 200 kilogram bottle. That's a really big outlay. So you kind of want to fix this before you have to start preparing for Victoria's cold winters. And a lot of these towns are in, cold parts of Victoria, like in near Bendigo and in East Gippsland and that sort of thing.
Because as you say, I mean, Esperance was a good example of how it was a package of things that they offered people to help them electrify. They did also have the option of going onto LPG, but the majority of those homes actually electrified. And some of the surveys I understand that Horizon have done subsequently have shown that people are very happy with what happened there. But the government did spend, I think it was $10 million on that. And there was a whole coordination of events and things to educate people about the benefits of electrification. I know they had cook-ups with the induction stoves and things like that. Would you like to see that happen in Victoria?
I think in Victoria, there's already some of that happening because the State Electricity Commission and also local councils, and coordinated with these local volunteer groups, have been doing some info sessions. I'm not sure how hands-on they've been, if they're actually getting the induction cooked up out and demonstrating that. But I think there's quite a lot that's going on with those groups there, and that stuff's really important.
But it's relying on volunteer groups in that case. I mean, I would guess that there needs to be further government and industry assistance.
Yeah, yeah, I think that that's right. I think that the SEC, their tools for doing this are still, like, just coming out of the pilot phase as well.
Yeah,
And so that it's probably happened a bit earlier
and they would
um,
have liked.
than would suit that timeline as well. And also just coordinating to make sure, the installation work goes to local trades as much as possible as well.
Mm,
And really just getting people through the difficult part of it, because once it's done, once the things are installed and people get their first electricity bill, because I think people hear the message that, yes, gas is expensive, but they see electricity is going up a bit as well. But once you actually make the switch and go, oh, it is actually a lot cheaper, because the difference is the efficiency that you can achieve
yeah.
with modern electrical appliances as well. And also people just getting the hang of induction cooking. I've been using just a plug-in induction cooktop at home, just to kind of get the hang of it and go, okay, we're saving up for a new kitchen.
It's quite different, isn't it?
It is, but we just had to recently revert back to the gas, because we didn't have the plug-in cooktop anymore, and we're just like, oh, I want the induction back. This is terrible. There's no control. I hate this. I keep burning everything. Um, it's really just a getting used to something different, and then once you've sort of got through that and you realize, oh, this is actually pretty good, and so it's really just that getting through the painful part, I think, and as much support as the government can provide in that. I mean, I think it's a great opportunity to generate some good stories, because it
Yeah.
can be really good and it can be a bit of a blessing in disguise. But we don't want to have, stories of woe about this, and we're sort of heading that way at the moment, I think.
Do you think that the Solstice case actually is a warning about the risks of privately owned energy networks in small towns, that, when the business case collapses, the communities are going to pretty much carry the fallout?
Well, I mean, that's exactly what's happened. The gas company has no interest other than making a profit. As soon as it's not profitable, then why would they stay? If you're in a regional community, this is something that you're always struggling with, because, it costs more to provide basically all services to regional areas. And regional communities, I think, get quite frustrated with feeling like you're coming off second best, because it costs more and you don't have the density of people for things like services and infrastructure. to be commercial, but it's really important that we have regional towns. They're people's homes. It's where a lot of important things happen. So we really need to make sure that people do have what they need.
What would you like policymakers to learn from what has been happening in these towns in regional Victoria?
The major message that I take from this is that policymakers need to have the confidence to communicate of how, like, where the future is heading. Gas use in Victoria is dropping really quickly. If you have a look at the numbers, and it's because it's expensive. It's because people are going electric, and I suspect that it's also because people are, going to bed early because they're cold and they don't want to turn the gas on, which is
Yeah,
which is terrible.
yeah.
And the longer that you leave it, the more money you're wasting on gas bills that you could be saving up to replace it. And so people need to get that message so that they can prepare and think about their next appliance replacement. And Victorians and probably everywhere have heard for decade that gas is cheap, gas is plentiful, and it's like gas is not cheap, gas is not plentiful, and burning hydrocarbons in your house is probably not the best idea either. So start thinking about this, and make sure you've got a bit of a plan and something in your back pocket so that you choose how this happens in your home and business.
Do you think we're gonna see other gas companies cutting and running from other regional towns as the economics worsen?
I think it's really in the hands of government and regulators how this plays out, with the exception of these isolated gas grids. And as we're already seeing, the isolated gas grids can, whether it's a government utility or a private gas company, are going to get to the point, as they already are, that it doesn't make sense to do this anymore. We're gonna switch over because everything's going electric and everything should go electric.
Mm.
With the main gas grids, it becomes down to how governments want to plan and set in the right rules in the system so that things can happen in an orderly fashion and that aren't just putting all of the costs onto people that can least bear it, that people have that time to prepare as well. And it's governments are a bit loath to do that because people don't really like being told. It would be an unpopular move, and so governments need to be, I think, like a bit bold and a bit confident about this, and talk more openly and educate people about the realities of what's the future of gas, because we all need to sort of start thinking about how we're going to move on from that, especially in Victoria where there's so many people that are dependent on gas, and we use so much gas in Victoria that it really kind of hits Victoria harder than everyone else.
Yeah. Because the gas companies are essentially pitching this as a choice that, being able to remain on gas is a choice, that people should have the right to make. But to keep people on the gas network for one, but also to even be putting them onto LPG and delaying the move to electric options also is problematic. I mean, you said, governments need to be bold. Do you think that the government needs to be a bit bolder here in terms of making the gas companies stop the spruiking? Because actually, one little example I did see in reading about what was happening with the Solstice phase out was that I read a press release from Supergas, which is one of the LPG companies. They're ready in the wings, to come in and rescue people with their LPG. Ideally, in the longer term, people should be going straight from the compressed gas to electric, shouldn't they?
Yeah, if they're able to get that over the line, it just becomes a money question, a money and time question at that point. What we're seeing more broadly from the gas industry is lots of creating lots of uncertainty about what's happening. And so things like
Mm.
the sponsorship of MasterChef, which is telling people tales about hydrogen powered barbecues and biomethane in the mains pipes and that sort of thing, is complete nonsense. They're selling something that you can't buy, And that's why there's been lots of activity now from the Australian Consumer and Competition Commission, and previously with the Commonwealth government's the Senate greenwashing inquiry, to really challenge these companies and stop telling tales that are really just designed to make people feel uncertain about what the future is, and to be able to, keep people shackled onto the gas pipes a bit longer, and just, to extract as much profit as possible, when it's really important, especially at this point in time, that people realize that this is, like, energy transitions are really hard and they involve everybody. And you need to understand and think about what's going on and talk to these community groups that are out there talking to people. And they're not out there going, "Ooh, gas is bad." They're going, "Look, electric is really good these days. Check it out." And so it's all very positive.
The other thing, though, I just wanted to raise that it's not a simple process moving from compressed natural gas to LPG anyway, is it? It's not just a plug and play option, because the gases are actually different. And my understanding is that you may even need new appliances if you're using LPG, if you've been on compressed natural gas.
As I understand it, you need to modify your appliances, and you also need to have somewhere to put the gas bottles, which not everyone has, like, to be able to access that, so the truck can come in and change them over and that sort of thing. So it's not simple for everyone, that's for sure.
Do you think that the messaging so far has been much more oriented to switch to LPG than go electric?
The feedback that we've received from people is they really feel that the way that Solstice is communicating with them is to make LPG as easy as possible, and to kind of nudge people towards that much more expensive option, rather than kind of encourage them to do something a bit different and choose electric. And when you've been given a short amount of time, if you haven't had chance to save up for it and that kind of thing, then it's
Mm.
the path of least resistance. It's what a lot of people are going to end up choosing, because it just feels too difficult. But also, a lot of people don't like LPG bottles. They feel to them unsafe, and they don't really want them. And so they kind of people that are in that situation are really sort of between a rock and a hard place.
Given that the gas network is expanding in some places, what do you think that this example of how Solstice are conducting their phase out, what do you think that should be telling other areas that may be expanding the gas network?
At this point in time, any expansion of the gas network is really selling people a very expensive and very poor value for money product. And you would have to be really not paying attention to connect to a gas network wherever you are in Australia, because the price of gas has tripled in about 10 years, and we're sort of now looking to more and more, like in Victoria, more and more marginal gas resources. They've really run out, or we are exposing ourselves to international gas prices and those price shocks even more than we are now. So, any government that's talking about expanding gas, or, making it available to more people and that kind of thing, they're really setting people up for a lot of pain in the not too distant future.
So, just a final question, Kat. These regional communities have one more year before the compressed natural gas gets turned off. What would you like to see happen now to try and get a fairer transition for the people of these regional towns?
I would like to see the efforts of Solstice and the SEC to step up. I think to get better incentives through Solstice, I think, would be warranted, and for the SEC to get their hands a bit more dirty and help people to package up how things are going to be done, because people might be just going to a tradesperson and they're coming back with a scary quote, whereas the companies that are sort of more specialized in this, and work with the incentive schemes really well, and that kind of thing can really do it much, much cheaper. You can't just tell people to shop around. People's eyes glaze over. I think that they could help with packaging up offers for people, helping them access some low-cost finance, if not paying for the whole thing as well. It's funny, I was having a look at the cost of rolling out these gas networks was $85 million, which works out to about 70 grand per affected household. So
Right.
imagine if they had that. You get a pretty flash kitchen for that, and the rest.
Yes.
So I think it's really about going that step further and taking some of the pain away from people.
Okay, well, let's. It'll be interesting to see how that all pans out over the next year. Kat Lucas Healey, thanks so much for joining the Switched On podcast.
Thank you for having me.
And Kat Lucas Healey is the Senior Climate and Energy Advisor at Environment Victoria. We'll continue to follow how the gas shutdown unfolds in regional Victoria over the coming year. I'm Anne Delaney. I hope you can join me next time on Switched On Australia for more news and analysis on electrification and the clean energy transition.